You're welcome to the Friends at Work podcast with Toye, the podcast about emotional intelligence at work. Hi, I'm Toye. On this week's episode, I interview a researcher turned wedding planner. With a PhD in public policy and a Stanford alumna, Marie-Claire Vasquez Duran has an enviable academic pedigree. As a wife, mother, classically trained ballerina, and classically trained pianist, she's super artistic and talented. Now, business Claire Duran, based in the DC metro area, does full-service wedding and event planning across the US and the Dominican Republic. Check out her business at claireduran.com. During our conversation, she talked about her career transition, managing multiple interests, what it has taken to work successfully with partners who are also her close friends, mentoring, and more. This episode is packed so full of value, you want to listen to it a few times and share with every woman you know. Here's our conversation.
Hi, my name is Marie-Claire Vasquez Duran, and I am a wedding planner. But I used to have a whole other life before that. Yeah, we'll get into all of that, I guess, once you throw me all of those questions.
Oh, interesting. What was your previous career? What were you doing before you got into wedding planning?
Yeah, so first of all, I guess I should say I am originally from the Dominican Republic, and I moved to the United States now about 10 years ago to pursue graduate education. I had worked on becoming an economist. And then when I came here, I did international political economy and then public policy for my political economy for the master's, and then for the PhD, I did public policy, and I focused on issues of democracy and governance in Latin America. Also, I got to have the amazing opportunities to work at very prestigious organizations here in the DC area, like the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, Brookings Institutions, and others. So professionally, what I was doing with my life was pretty much like look at these issues of governance and democracy in the region, and then apply statistics, a lot of econometrics, and other tools of analysis to look at these issues from that particular perspective. And what happened was that at some point in my life, I started to feel a strong desire to go back to what I call my artistic roots. I think that at core, I think that we as human beings are not people of necessarily one interest or one set of skills and talent. And I particularly feel that I am a person of multiple interests. And after focusing for so many years in the same thing of, this other career that I just mentioned, my whole artistic side was pretty much dead. I grew up dancing. I was a classical ballerina since I started training when I was 4 and did it until I came to the US. And even here I did it a little bit too. So it was over 20 years of being in that world as well as a musician. I trained in the National Conservatory of Music back in the Dominican Republic as a classical pianist as well. So I used to do so many things that had to do with art that again, I felt dead, totally dead. So knowing as well that I loved the whole designing events, which just for opportunities that stumbled upon me, that I think it was just fate that, as I was growing up and becoming a young adult, I had those opportunities and discovered that was one particular creative outlet that I was going to be very excited about. So what happened is that, I got married a year after I got pregnant. And then as I was pregnant, I always imagined that I was going to be like that mom who goes back to work. So I always thought that I was going to go back to the office. At the time I was working at the Inter-American Development Bank. That after I took my few months to be with my baby, I was just going to go back. But actually, that was the same time where I felt like, okay, no. So once she came out, I was like, there's no way I'm leaving this kid behind. And so I started having those conflicting thoughts about not going back to an office at the same time that I was feeling artistically dead. So that combination of factors kind of got me into just realizing that maybe I should give this other passion of mine that I had only been able to do it for friends of friends and family, but not really doing it like as a career choice, as a profession. So I started like getting a little bit more formally educated about it. Although I always felt like I really had like an intrinsic knowledge of what needed to be done. But of course, there's always so much that you learn. So I started doing that. And then the day after I defended my dissertation, I came back home and I kind of told my husband that I had this crazy idea, which he must love me so much. I know he does, because like it was the perfect timing where he was thinking, oh, nice, now she's gonna get a raise because now she has that, you know, degree to hang in the office. But on the contrary, I wanted to become an entrepreneur after having done so much with my other career, and so I did. And the truth is that I haven't looked back. Is the riskier decision that I've made in my life, but one that I have regretted the least. Like, I'm so happy with what has happened. It's been almost 4 years since then, and it's been really, really gratifying.
That's an awesome story. That's just really great to hear that you followed your passion and it's taking you where you want to go.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit more about your wedding planning business.
Yeah, and I will do just in a second, but I know that you just said that, like, following your passion, and what has been more difficult about all of this, I should say, is the fact that it's not my only passion. So for me, kind of like starting to balance, because at the beginning it was like that, like I was still doing both things at the beginning, and then at some point the business grew so much that 2 years ago I had to like really put aside my research career, and it was very difficult because that's also my passion. It's just that once I took over like the decision of having a business, then now I have like such a direct commitment to it. Like, I'm the one person who's like, whatever happens depends so much on what I do in terms of customer services, etc. So it's something that I could just not let not be up to par. So that ended up meaning that I had to like stop doing other things. But anyway, so as far as my business, so it's called Claire Duran Weddings and Events. When I introduced myself, you know that I said that my name is Marie Claire Vasquez Duran. So on purpose, since the beginning, I decided to go for my middle name and my second last name. As a Latina, I have two last names. And the reason I wanted to do that was precisely because of the fear of wanting to like keep my two personas on separate levels, because so many people, I think, that in my other career would have found like my decision to become a wedding planner kind of like degrading in a way. So I had a fear at the beginning of losing respect in the research community, that I wanted to separate my two personas. You ask me now, I could care the least, you know, like I've become so comfortable with the decision that I've made in my life that that's not an issue in my mind anymore. But that's why I chose those names. So my business name is Claire Duran Weddings and Events. I'm based in the DC metropolitan area, and my biggest focus, not that it started like that, but has become over time destination weddings, specifically in the country that I mentioned that I'm from, the Dominican Republic, though we still have a lot of business here in the area. And I have an amazing teammate with me here in the States, who's a friend, so this is going to get interesting in a little bit as far as the conversation goes, and another one who's also a great friend in the Dominican Republic. And basically what we do is we plan and design weddings, and we get the clients and we just walk them through the whole process of getting ready for that event. And we do everything from vendor contracts, like just negotiating the vendors, finding out who are their best fit, working on their budget, working on the design, how everything's going to look, all the research around all the things that they want to make happen, making them happen. And of course, at the end, executing the event and managing the whole night. It's a process that usually we spend on average a year working with our clients, unless it's the ones that are only looking for coordination, which are the ones who plan their weddings and we just come at the end for logistics. But the bulk of our business is working with full service clients who, as I said, like we can spend 1 year working with them, and by the time that they're getting married, I'm crying myself out because it's like a friend that is getting married, because of the all the back and forth makes you so emotionally attached in a way that it becomes like just very satisfying in that way as well. Like you seeing that all of these months of planning have become into like this very beautiful moment in these people's lives, and it feels really good.
Yeah, I don't want to lose a thought that came to my mind when you made a comment earlier about the fact that this is not your only passion.
Yeah.
And so I want you to talk a bit more about what it took for you to decide to focus on one thing over the other, and what are your thoughts about this particular area in general when someone has multiple passions and then has to prioritize.
Right.
And so just I want to know your thoughts along those lines.
Yeah, I have a lot, but I think I can summarize them in the following way. I think that you need to know where you are, in which stage of life you are, and then I think, and the support that you have, and that will take you into two different paths. I think that, and then this pretty much I'm going to answer about the decision to become an entrepreneur. I think that's kind of like the underlying question there. So, to me, I had a situation which was that thankfully I had a husband. We're still married. So, I have a husband that could provide for my family. So that allowed me to pretty much, because at the beginning, as I said, I was doing both things, but I had to cut my hours for consulting in the research world. So like immediately my income for, as far as research concerns, was declined pretty much because of the less work that I was taking so that I could take on the business. And then what happened with the business is that as any business was starting at the beginning, you're not like, it's not always the story that you start like profiting so much right away. So I took, as a family, we took a financial hit, but thankfully like I had my husband to support me through the first few years of financial struggle that comes with decisions like that. And, what happened is that I had the luxury to take that leap of faith. Had I been a single mom, I couldn't have done it. I would probably still be like doing part-time consulting so that I can have that steady income, because what happens with wedding planning is that it can be very seasonal, because you have like kind of like what it's called the engagement session. Pretty much right now, people are going to engage over the holidays, people are going to engage after Valentine's Day, so you're getting a lot of increase now. And then later in the year, I might be very busy executing those weddings, but I'm not necessarily getting lots of increase of new clients who are signing up. So the flow of income is very seasonal, which means that if you are a person who, you're the only one and you're the only one who will pay those bills, then the decision to like take a leap of faith and pursue a certain passion that might not come with a steady income is a little bit harder. So my conclusion is that if you can take like a big leap of faith, start your entrepreneurial passion, and you know that you will have someone else's support, and that's not only financially, but of course emotionally, it's probably even more important than the financial one, then yeah, go ahead. But if not, just take it slow, start transitioning, try to find time in the extra hours to put your time and soul into your passion. And then when it's responsibly a good moment for you, your family, whatever it may be, to like take a bigger step than you do. I realize that sometimes for ideas to be successful, business ideas to be successful, you just have to be very aggressive about it. It changes so much from one business idea to the other. But in general, I think that it's just a good thing to be responsibly ready for big leaps like those, and not just like because what's going to happen is that if you don't prepare yourself, you might go very aggressively into the idea, realize that it's hard to be successful, that it sometimes takes, it's not only hard work and it's not only luck, it's a combination of both, and sometimes those take time. And if you're not ready for it, you might get just frustrated within the first few months and quit. And then you abandon your passion just because you hadn't built up the time to become ready for it.
That's good. I mean, you sound very, very much entrepreneurial. I like the energy that I'm getting from you on this. And so to go back to what you were talking about with partnerships, because these are the type of things that show up in business. First of all, it's about prioritizing and getting started, like you talked about, and now the kind of partnerships that you have friends that you work with and you run the business with. So can you talk about the dynamics of that and talk a little bit about how you manage friendship and work in your business?
Yeah, I would say that it's the hardest thing, but in the best of ways. So it's the hardest thing because when you're working, and by the way, like both of these people that I mentioned are really close friends of mine, not just somebody who became a friend because we've been working together. Like we were friends before we started working together. And what happens is that then it becomes like incredibly important to guard people's sentiments, not because you're being fluffy or a softie as a creative director, which is the title that I use for myself, but just because, you care about this person beyond working terms. So what I have found incredibly successful, and I know that both of them would say the same, is have a line of communication even more genuine and open and vulnerable than I would ever have with just somebody that I would consider my workmate as opposed to my workmate / really good friend. So the only way that we've been able to overcome all the challenges that have come by, which are many, is just by being very, very honest with ourselves and not being afraid to have very difficult conversations. So sometimes you have to have like money conversations or workload conversations or just things that in the eye of the other could be like at a moment being unfair to the other. And this, it happens both ways. And then what is just important is that, you keep a very respectful and very honest line of communication open at all times. And that, again, what I think it's just sometimes people are afraid to have the difficult conversations, especially again when you know that you're talking to a friend and it's difficult to navigate that professional / friendship line. But I think that what I've always known is sometimes I've been afraid to have certain conversations, and then it keeps me up awake for days and weeks, whatever. And then once I finally have like brave up to have that conversation, then I feel so much better. And then she feels so much better. And everybody feels so much better. And then the energy to have a super positive working relationship comes back. So I think that that's the key. And I know that is very cliche, just have open conversations, but it's the truth. The dynamic is very different. Like I know that if I were working with people who just came to me because they found a job application somewhere and then I hire them, the situation would be totally different. And I would be handling situations with the same level of respect, but I know that the math into like the repercussions of anything I say would be a little bit different. Because the truth is that if any of these ladies at any point would say, you know what, I want to do something else with my life. I want the working relationship to be good enough that once it ends, we're still going to be the same friends. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's something that I not necessarily would need to be worried about with a random employee.
Yeah. Wow. So this is usually a tough one, and I like how you say it's working for you so far with your friends. And can you think of any specific advantages that you've had working with your friends and in getting stuff done in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the first thing is because I was able to know these people before we started working together. I knew the kind of human beings that they were, and I knew the kind of professionals that they were. So that meant that I was able to trust them pretty quickly. My business being my baby, I cannot imagine how much different would it have been to, again, just hire somebody randomly and, not the training process, because the training process doesn't change, but just the idea that I know that I'm putting my name on the hands of people that will respect it and carry it with dignity and with the same ethical values and morals that I have. So that was very important, and it's something that it would take years for me to necessarily see that on a stranger. So that was a good thing. The other thing is that we get to do life together as well. So it gives me the opportunity to, as I'm working with these people, constantly like getting to know them even more and more and more than I knew them when we were just friends. So it has, by working all the time together, like it has grown their relationship as well, and learned things about them that I couldn't have learned before, and just be closer to them. And I think that it makes work a little bit more how can I put it, like a little bit more social than it would have otherwise been. So we can stop, like, while we're getting like a client task done, we can stop for a second and talk about something about our families and joke something about our husbands. And, that makes it a little bit, not that that doesn't happen necessarily with co-workers that you just become friends with at the job place. But what I can say, and I don't know if you were going to get this in the future in any of your upcoming questions, but what I can tell you is that if I were to look back in all of the jobs that I had before I became an entrepreneur, I could probably count with less fingers than in a hand how many of those previous co-workers really like became my friends, that I could still call them friends. And I'm not talking Facebook friends, but real life friends. And there's none. Like you would, while you are in the job, you think like, oh, these are my people. You always go have lunch together. But more often than not, many friendships just end the minute one of you walk away.
And so it's, you walked into the question that I was going to ask next, which was comparing your workplace relationships in your previous career with your current business.
Yeah.
And I think you gave a good answer to that already. So I want to ask a question on behalf of someone listening, a lady listening who wants to run a business and doesn't know where to start. They have a great career already, or they don't, but because entrepreneurship is such a difficult step for many people to take.
Right.
What advice would you give to a protege if you met them in person, somebody who's looking up to you for advice? What advice would you give to them to go to start their business?
Right. Well, the first thing is that whatever you want to do, you do need to research your market. I think that so many ideas out there would sound brilliant, but the minute that you start doing research, or the minute that you start talking to other people about it, you will be able to see, to really assess how good your business idea might be. And I think that that's important before anybody takes any step. And there's so much that you can discover just by talking out loud about it with other people. I think that a lot of times I've found people who don't want to tell anybody because they think their idea is so novel and whatnot. And I think that, it might be something that really applies under certain scenarios, but in general, I think that what has been better for me, and it was since the beginning, was just to be able to have just brainstorming sessions with people who have nothing to do with it. I think it's incredibly helpful to get that perspective, but as well with people who are already where you want to be. So that would be my first step. Like, talk to those people, figure out how they got there, what have been their challenges. And you will find some people who might not want to tell you anything because they want to guard their secrets. As an entrepreneur, I think that's incredibly silly. I'm the one who is like an open book. Anybody who wants any wedding planner in the making can knock on my door, and I will be totally open about it. I believe more in community than in competition, but I would say, talk to other people who are where you are, ask them about their journey, what did it take, just so that you understand really what your future may be looking like. Because what happens a lot of times is that people may say, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur because I want to manage my own time however I want. I want to have time to do this, to do the what, and it can seem very tempting. I don't want to have a boss who's always telling me what to do, etc. But the truth is that you're going to work probably double than what you were at the office. And you will have to learn to become the boss, which is not necessarily something that everybody enjoys doing. Sometimes people become entrepreneurs because they like doing whatever the result of your business is, but not the managing part of it. So just make sure that you're ready for that until you can get somebody else perhaps to take on the admin stuff, which is not always that a possibility for a incipient business. So I would say, again, just to kind of give you the bullet points, research your market, talk to as many people as you can, and then if it seems like the idea is right and you feel it in your heart, just go for it. But as I mentioned before, go for it responsibly, and responsibly can look very different depending on what your life circumstances are.
Yeah. So I want to join your response here with something you talked about earlier about family. Mm-hmm. And usually, or a lot of people, a lot of women in particular, are thinking about marriage and thinking about family and thinking about work mm-hmm. in a way that men sometimes don't think about it.
Right.
And so how would you say, how would you advise specifically any lady listening to this to navigate that, starting the business, but also managing all the other, or juggling all the other balls in there of family, of marriage mm-hmm. and other things that women focus more on. Not that men don't think about.
No, but I understand what you're saying.
Important.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that it's all about making sure you have a support system, especially because if you are talking about somebody who's just about to start their business and they're going like full scope on it, it's going to take so much out of you. It's going to drain you, even in the best of ways. I'm not saying it in a bad way, but it's going to demand so much time. So you need to make sure that you're going to have a support system. And I also mentioned this before. It has to be like not only financially but emotionally. Like if my husband hadn't been as supportive of all the late nights that I'm still pulling, even 4 years in, but they need to understand the sacrifices that you have to go through at the beginning and be okay with taking a little bit more than would it be if you have the office job. So I think that the support system, it's what makes things be possible for entrepreneurs who need to respond to the family demands and other things. And another thing that I would say is also make sure to have boundaries. Like the world will still go on if certain things, don't get done today. Like, if you need to know that even if you have to work hard, and I believe that, if you want to put too many boundaries and you're not willing to ever make sacrifices, then you probably are not going to get too far. I feel like those sacrifices will have to be made, like parties that you will have to miss, and other moments that you will have to just let go of because work needs to get done. So, but at the same time, I feel like you need to also stand your grounds to what are your priorities, what are your non-negotiables, and then be able to say no when you need to, even if it means losing a business because you're determined to not lose your ballet, like your daughter's ballet recital or whatever it may be. But I think that you need to, if you're a family woman, probably your family is your number one priority. And I think that it needs to remain no matter what decisions you make about pursuing entrepreneurship. But again, the support system will allow you to take the extra efforts that you will have to take for a little bit.
Awesome. So as we round up this conversation, March is Women's History Month in the United States. And I've enjoyed having this conversation. I love the energy. I love it's infectious. And have you had women in your life that have inspired you, whether they're public figures or people in your life, and why? Yeah.
So my number one inspiration, actually, is my aunt, my mom's sister. She has done so many different things with her life, and she was never afraid to try new things, and she was never afraid to she didn't care what people said about it. She became an accountant when she was past 50 years old, if my memory serves me right. I know she did it while I was already old, and She paints, she does jewelry, she bakes, she cooks, she does so many things. And all of them, she took them very seriously. She was a person, and she always laughs that, I'm so like her. And I honestly think I am. I was same person. I always had so many multiple interests, which also it's something that I inherited from my dad. But we're talking women now, so we can praise him another day. So I really think that I took over her in that of being like just, again, a person with lots of interests and not being afraid to pursue them all. Like, I'm never afraid to sing. I promise you, I don't sound like Celine Dion, but give me a microphone and I'll sing. Like, I don't care. I just go for things. I was afraid a little bit of what, my research peers would have said, but I pulled a Tony, which is my aunt's last nickname, and I just went for it. Like, whatever. People can say whatever. I don't care. So I think that she was very inspiring in that way, that she just tried things and just did it for her, And again, not a public figure, but I do have to say that my mom is just my pillar in that sense. She and I have so very different professional interests. What she does bores me. I cannot explain how much. She's an amazing professional, so well recognized. She's done great things with her career. But so what I'm trying to say with that is that I am not speaking from a inspiration for neither democracy and governance, neither for wedding planning, but what I always saw of her was like the dedication and hard work and just being like, and actually all the women in my family are so strong and just fantastic people that you could say, okay, this is like the best role model that I could ever have. And because, she showed me what it's like to be like a very dedicated professional, working whatever hours she needed to work, but at the same time, never sacrificing her mom duties and always being like a fantastic mom as well. So I wish I could have given you like fancy names, but the truth is that those are my two ladies.
That's great. I mean, you don't have to give fancy names. These are people who have inspired you, and you've talked about very specific things that they did, that their actions and their life has.
And they're pretty fancy to me.
Awesome. So thank you very much for coming on the show. And this has been a very, very inspiring conversation. And I'm sure my listener would also agree. I hope to have you on at some other point.
Oh my God, it would be such a pleasure. And thank you so much for having me.
That's our episode for this week. Thanks for listening. Let's continue the conversation. You can reach me by email at myfriendtoye@gmail.com or on Facebook at Friends at Work Podcast. And you can follow me on Twitter at Friends at Work US. Join me next time for another episode of Friends at Work Podcast with Toye. Bye for now.